Next on Rugby Wrap-Up, Major League Rugby analysis and highlights and previews and opinion with Dan Power, Bryan Ray, and Matt McCarthy.
Rugby Wrap-Up brought to you in part by The Pig and Whistle, the world's best rugby pub. The Murphy Kennedy Group, founded with the idea that construction can be done better. And Lean and Limber, stretching your way to a healthier lifestyle.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up. Matt McCarthy in New York City, Dan Power apparently in New York City, and Bryan Ray at the National Library of Ontario. Bryan, let's start with you. Sort through those tomes and tell us what's behind you there.
Yeah, well, my Arrows had the week off, so I figured I should brush up on my knowledge. This is actually my personal library here, secret chamber in my house, so I'm just getting a little extra wisdom, just kind of brushing up. Knowledge is power, Matt. Knowledge is power.
And speaking of power, we have Dan Power in front of a city that requires a lot of power. Or just to get that backdrop.
I had the pleasure of hanging out with our esteemed host this weekend. I was in his city. I was a guest in the greatest city on earth or just in USA. I don't want to upset people up in Nova Scotia.
Your choice. But did we have a good time?
Had a great time. Great time.
I hear we had a good time. All right, speaking of good times, we had a Wednesday night Battle of the Titans. Dan, your Gilgronis against Brian's Giltinis.
Did we settle on a name for this game, Matt? Was it?
The Gilchrist Bolini.
Okay, Bolini. All right, yeah. LA, good team. Austin, good team. It was a good game. It was a very defensive-orientated game. Austin kind of tried to drag them into a New York-style upset win there, but LA looked good on the road there in Austin. I think that they'll be pretty happy with that because they grafted out a good victory there. But Austin played really well. So Adam Gilchrist is the winner here, I guess.
Rugby won.
Rugby
won.
I thought Austin kind of there's a decision they made just before halftime to take 3 points when they had a driving maul, got held up. I really thought they had LA's number on that maul in the forwards. And, you can kind of see where they're going at. They want to get points on the board before halftime. But I really thought they should have gone for a try then. And then we have a little bit of a different complexion at halftime. Instead, they got the 3 points, and that's the only points they got all game. In the second half, they just couldn't get anything going. You have to give credit to LA's defense. I don't know what they made. 100 and something tackles, and I think they missed like 5. So just an absurd defensive performance for them. And, tough luck for Austin. They used all their subs, and then Mo Abdelmanam, my Canadian buddy, hurt his knee. So they played the last 10 minutes with only 14 men. So it was over at that point. But, it was a good, hard-fought game. I mean, it looked like playoff rugby. 2 good teams going at it, and defense was definitely at the forefront.
The next one up was one that had us scratching our heads trying to figure out which team was what and who we thought they were and are. The Utah Warriors going on the road into the gold mine, Bryan.
Yeah, much better showing offensively from Nola this week. I actually think that Utah, I think this game was there for the taking for them. They're kind of mistakes were a little bit self-inflicted. Hagen Schulte made a line break and just dropped the ball cold. Mike Teo picks up a loose ball and runs straight out of bounds. James Vifali tackles Tim Halpin in the air inexplicably. There's a yellow card. A couple bad line-out throws. I mean, just these little accuracy things. If they get those right, maybe they have enough to do this. I thought Nola had a few holes in defense, but they looked much better offensively. So, there was something there interesting to see. Kyle Rogers, who played fly half in college, stepped in the second half at number 10 he started at fullback and then moved to number 10. So I thought that was an interesting move. Certainly he's a big guy and he can take on the line. So that's maybe something worth exploring for Nola.
So off the line out, wasn't it Schulte that had to absorb the hit from, I think it was Pat O'Toole from the gold, Bryan?
Yeah, it just went straight to Pat, and he just saw, just went straight ahead, straight over him for the try. You don't want your number 10 to be in that position, having to stop a tight forward from that range.
But Dan, he showed the courage, getting right in there.
He did, and it's tough to adjust that quickly. He goes from his own line out where he's like, yeah, we're good here. I'm just going to clear this ball out, or we're going to clear the ball out, to Pat O'Toole, steam coming out of his nostrils, running straight at me. It's like, make an adjustment, but not quick enough. Yeah, this game I picked Utah in this game. and then we went over that in the show. So if anyone wants to make fun of me, go watch
I
last
picked
week's
him
show.
too.
Yep, but I thought Nola played really well, and I agree with Brian. I think Utah just didn't execute here, and picking in this league just continues to baffle me.
Next one up, Old Glory. Going into Houston, another one that we thought maybe the SaberCats at home, which SaberCats team is going to show up. Old Glory gets the job done on the road, Brian.
Yeah, it was, it was rainy, it was mucky, handling wasn't the best. This is another interesting decision. Early on, Houston really, had Old Glory on the defensive, and they just picked the automatic 3 in front of the post, and a penalty from about 6 meters out. I think they could have gone for a scrum or something. I understand the decision conditions weren't great, risk of a turnover maybe, but I kind of wish they'd gone for a try and really gone out a little bit more aggressive in this one than they did. So, I just think in the end, Old Glory played the conditions a little better. The scrum was a little bit better in that game. Good win on the road for them.
Tough conditions. Old Glory handled it better. And again, I just felt like Old Glory had more to play for. They're still in touch with the East, and a much-needed win for them down there on the road. So that big test this week, though.
Huge win for Old Glory. Huge win. And, on the road, they showed some moxie, and they got a big win to just make it even more interesting in that Eastern Conference. We also had New York and New England. As kind of a guy out on the outside looking in as an Arrows fan, what do you think of the teams at the top of the table?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to pick every week. That's why I'm here in this library. I'm trying to learn, try to pick up tips. I mean, this game kind of went the way I think we all kind of thought it was going to go. I mean, New York's forwards just a little bit stronger. We saw they had a couple, driving wall tries. And then I think their depth at the end, the last one in that heat, it was a bit breezy, but it's hot out there, right? So that last 20 minutes, they just had more depth on the bench to kind of reach into. I mean, you get a guy like Chris Mattina coming out there and putting in 20 minutes. That's, he's not looking at a place in a starting lineup in MLR. So to have those kind of guys to pull off the bench just was a step above New England, who had 2 brand new players coming off the bench.
Are you disparaging Chris Mattina, who came in and slotted a key kick?
Disparage. I just said he was good.
I don't know if I heard it that way. I think it was like a backwards compliment. Dan, was he slagging?
I just come off the streets of New York, Ryan. You better watch it with that mouth of yours. You say that in New York, you may not get out of the city. You mightn't be so lucky. But Matthew, we were both there for this one. It's the first in-person game I've done in probably 18 months. So March 2020. So not 18 months, but a long time. And I was in person. I got to see you. I got to physically touch you and shake you and Steve Lewis and a bunch of the other people out there. But I got to give credit here. Andy Ellis got player of the match. Very nearly went to Harry Bennett because of the situation he found himself in, replacing Holland's Head. A lot of pressure coming in. Hadn't played a lot of minutes this year. In fact, in the last 2 years. And he comes out with an unreal performance. So just dominated the first half, kicked really well into a strong breeze, controlled the tempo in attack, had a hand in a few tries, scored a try himself in the second half, and then off at 60 minutes, which I think was a planned substitution by the sound of it. Connor McManus, man, Andy Ellis probably played the year out, but New York have an absolute gem in Connor McManus. That kid is just such a high energy, high work rate player. I really like the looks of him. And for New England, it's a tough loss on the road. Winning on the road's hard on the Eastern Conference, so you got to take those wins when you can get them. Kicking it dead twice in the first half really hurt. Like, that's an 80-meter turnaround.
And the 240-yard rolling maul in the second half by the Free Jack.
Yeah, it was weird because it kind of splintered, but the maul stayed together, and then New York's like, truck and trailer. And the ref's like, no, it's actually the same maul, so it can't be. And they kept going. It was this little moment of confusion. And by the time New York tried to get back around, Conradi had busted and there was just no one at home. And yeah, it's one of the ones I think both coaching staffs will probably watch on the tape. And someone's going to be like, well, we messed up there, or we got lucky there, or whatever it was. But yeah, it was great to be back, Matt. Great to be in New York City, and a good win for Rugby United too.
It absolutely was a great performance from Has Benno, as he calls himself online. But the way he was just, his hands, how fast they were. You get the ball from Ellis and immediately ship it. I mean, how fast did it get from him and then Foden and then Fuatai to Thakam Balavu out on the wing, and then he scores. And he had miles of space. It was so fast. So I was really impressed with how quick his delivery was, and he's playing flat on the line. So really, it was an impressive performance from him.
How about that backup fly half for New York, Andy Ellis?
Andy Ellis.
Just, let me shift from 9 to 10.
Didn't they rename an island for him?
That's
just
Andy
off the
Ellis
coast
Island. It's
I
Andy
love it.
Ellis Island. Yeah.
Matt McCarthy on fire at about 1 a.m.
I don't know what you're talking about, but it was fun not being able to get an Uber downtown and having to take the subway at 12:30 a.m. That's a whole different story. Atlanta on the road all the way up to the Pacific Northwest. Scott Lawrence's troops, no way they're going to win at Starfire.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to say that because I think we all picked ATL to win. I got to give credit to Dan for predicting. I mentioned the narrow pitch at Starfire, and I mean, it worked out perfectly for ATL the way their defense is structured. They just completely shut down Seattle. I mean, their second half, Seattle was parked in their end for about 20 minutes, and then 2 yellow cards to ATL, and they still couldn't get through. That defense was just airtight. So pretty impressive defensive showing from ATL, but they picked their spots offensively as well. Adrian Carlos with a couple really nice breaks and that one, nice little grubber to set up a score at the end too. So just a strong road victory for ATL. They didn't look like, necessarily world beaters, but they went and they looked, it was a professional job on the road to pick up the bonus point win.
Dan, you know what I like about ATL is that there are always the Atlanta jerseys, a bunch of them around every play, defensively or line support. And we've seen line support, a lack thereof, kill some great runs into the open by some backs or some whomever this year.
Yeah, we talked a few weeks ago, defining games, right? Austin going to New England, they lost there. Utah going to Nola going to San Diego. 3 losses, right, for defining games, all 3 teams. We said ATL, this is a defining game, going on a long, long road trip. Seattle improving, getting better every week at home. They're very tough up there. I was super impressed. Like defensively, that was a really great effort for them to keep Seattle out that entire 80 minutes there. And I just walk away from that game so impressed with what Scott Lawrence is doing, what ATL's doing, the players. Carlos moving to 10, like it's his natural position. I agree with Brian. I'm like, he's doing so well at 15. Don't rock the boat. Just let him play 15. Yeah. And then, wow, he's just been added another level at 10. So super impressed with ATL. And they go on the road, defining game, and they get a win. So it puts them in a great spot, number 1 in the East. So it's good times to be a rattlesnake, right? Yeah.
Dan, you were number 1 in the East this weekend. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break and come back with predictions and previews after this. If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
I've been blind since I was 4, and I've never seen a beer commercial or a beer label. None of that stuff influences me. I drink beer because of the taste, and my beer is Pabst Blue Ribbon. It has the taste and the flavor.
What do you think's on the label?
I think there's a naked woman riding on a unicorn, jumping over fire. Oh, that's good beer.
We are back. Dan Power, Matt McCarthy, and Bryan Ray. Brian, we've got no weekend ahead of us gets easier. Especially when we're trying to decide who's going to win or lose, but also because of the points and the table points and who's at first, what's on second. You got Toronto, your boys, going into New England. This is one that a lot of eyeballs are going to be on.
Yeah, this is, I think if we're going to call it a must-win, it is maybe for both teams. I don't know. I
Absolutely.
Yeah, I certainly feel that way for Toronto. This could be a pivotal game. Coming off a bye week, they've had a chance to kind of rest after 9 straight weeks of hard slogging. I think they're going to have a couple guys like Tukale is probably going to come back, I think, for this one. So that's a big boost for them. And, New England at home, I mean, they won both their games there so far. So they're obviously going to be up for this one. So I'm very much looking forward to this. Obviously, I'm picking the Arrows to come through this one. But, this is going to be an exciting game.
Dan, Tukalete, not Tukale, right? Let's get it right out right now, Ray. Right now. It's not the French-Canadian pronunciation.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around Dutoy or Dutois with Brian, so I've just given up with names.
It's Dutois.
Yeah.
It's on video. Anywho, Dan.
Yeah, it's a defining game, right, on the road for Toronto off the bye. I think the bye sometimes hurt teams this year. That we've seen the bye actually be quite detrimental to momentum. New England have got a run here of 6 games. I think they're probably going to win 4 out of the 6, potentially 5 out of the 6. I think this is going to be the one that slips them up, though.
Yeah, this is a tough one to call because New England kind of changes personality week to week if they can stay out of the sin bin. And Toronto, as Brian pointed out, if they get Tukalete back, that back line is dynamic. Tukalete just really making all those other guys better. Lesage having a great year. Montero, the beast on the wing. Very excited back line. And this is going to be a tough battle. I think Toronto takes this one in a squeaky bum type victory. The next one up, Houston going into San Diego. Dan, who is San Diego?
Joe Peterson is playing. I'll pick San Diego. If not, who knows anymore? They are 6 points back from second place right now.
Crazy.
So it is crazy, but they could make a run. They've got some reinforcements coming in. The bushranger, Paddy Ryan, will be here in a couple of weeks, which is another huge asset they're going to have up front. That set piece is going to look really good when he's there and just galvanizes that pack. Like, he's a hard man and great man, but a hard man, like in a good way. And, I think at this point, Houston can just embrace their role as spoiler for the rest of the year and maybe try out, give some young guys a shot, change some positions, kind of have an eye towards 2022, which is crazy to say that at a halfway point, but I kind of feel like that's unfortunately where they're trending and maybe tell some guys, listen, you're playing for your contract here in the next 7-8 weeks, so let's see what you got and away you go.
Brian, are we going to see a flurry of trades like at the trading deadline in other sports with teams that think they're out of it?
We haven't really seen that yet in MLR, have we? I mean, we've seen the odd trade here and there, but we haven't seen that, building towards a playoff run. So I don't know, maybe that kind of North American sporting aspect creeps its way into Major League Rugby as well. I mean, what would the rugby aficionados around the world think of that kind of thing?
Well, this is America. It's capitalism. It's the way we do sports here. And, you can trade for foreign player slots. You can trade for the draft pick, which could impact your team. Who knows? But, I think teams are going to start getting creative. And also, it just generates buzz, too. But you do have the difficulty of moving players from city to city on the budgets that they're on, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it would kind of have to be some kind of swap where it's cash might be involved, too, which that could get a little tricky.
Yeah,
throw it out, Matt. Who would you trade? Well, who's out of it? You'd say right now just Seattle and Houston.
I wouldn't say anybody's out of it. You two are slandering teams, slamming them to the ground and ripping apart their whole organizations. And I'm saying everybody's still in it. So Los Angeles going into Atlanta, Giltinis versus the Ratlers.
It almost feels like for the 3rd or 4th week in a row, we've got 1 versus 2. So as the tables, let's keep shifting. But it is 1 versus 2. LA's last trip to the East Coast wasn't a great trip, and Atlanta can play the same style of rugby that New York played on that day, and it's going to be hot in Atlanta. It's going to be sticky. It's going to be messy, and it plays into what ATL do well. So this will be a good game for LA to prove, perhaps, that they can handle the travel. They can play on the road. They can play in a tough environment, and they can still get the win. So I'll give the advantage to LA because I think they deserve it. They've got the runs on the board with only that 1 loss, but I could totally see this being their 2nd loss on the year if ATL get firing early down there. Probably going to be a massive crowd for this one too.
Is Gito going to make the trip?
Well, that's a great question because after New York, you'd almost think that he has to, right? They've got a good lead on the West Coast Conference. They probably want the number 1 seed overall, though, We don't know how the final is going to work in terms of a venue, but in seasons past, it's the highest seed hosts the final. So LA is going to want to host the final. Yeah, you go LA, but I go, yeah, it's going to be a really good game, really intriguing because great defense versus a beautiful flowing offense down there.
Man, this is so close. I want to pick ATL to upset LA at home. I think they have it in them, but I just think that little bit of rest difference is going to help LA maybe get over their own travel situation heading over there. So I'm going to go with LA, but I think this is going to be very close. And hey, this could be a precursor to the final if you think about it.
You're thinking this could be a precursor to the final?
Possibly. I mean, I think it's going to be ATL or the Arrows in the East are looking like the top two.
You're still clinging to that. You're still going to your quiver.
I got it.
Okay. All right. And you know what? I can't argue with that. You're a good Canadian, Brian. Bryan Ray, good Canadian.
Yeah, he's the best Canadian I've ever met.
You can die now, Brian. But before you do, let's go to the next one. Austin going into Utah.
If San Diego don't get running, and we'll know, that result of that game with San Diego and Houston at this point. If Houston upset them, then you kind of say, well, San Diego's out of it. This is now the battle for number 2. And this could be the difference, this game here, on who wins this game, because they've already played down in Austin, start of the year. So this is the return one now. And Austin lost the opening game. So if they lose both, that tiebreaker, if they end up pretty tight at the end, there's not going to look good for Austin. So they really have to get this win here on the road.
Brian, how does Utah win this one?
Well, they just got to execute. I mean, they just made those mistakes as we were talking about in against Nola, just these little problems that they have. So if they can get their line out sorted out, if they can, get their decision making, these little split second decisions, the 50-50 calls in their minds just haven't been going their way. So if they can get those to just shift in their direction a little bit, then yeah, I think they've got a fighting chance at this one. Austin, a very tough team, but Austin's hurting a bit. They've had a couple other injuries they picked up in that game against LA. So, they're digging deep a bit into the war chest to see who they can haul out. So I'm interested to see what kind of lineup they put out for this. Man, this is a close game. This is a pivotal game in that division, you have to think. So I don't know who to pick, to be honest. I'm going to flip a coin and go with Utah at home in a very, very close match.
Can Sean Pittman get his guys recovered and back on and positive again? I think so, but I just think that the Gilgronis, even beaten up as they are the better team. But they lost in New England, right? So I'm going Utah. I'm going Utah in this one. I just changed it up. Boom. And then we've got New York going into D.C., another critical Eastern Conference match. Old Glory, you thought they were dead and out of it, and they're back in the middle of it. You thought the Free Jacks were making a step up the ladder, and now they're kind of going back and forth. But, there's a lot of rugby to be played and a lot of points to be taken, Brian.
Is this another must-win for both teams? I mean, every game.
Yeah, I mean, every game in the East now is a must-win for everybody. You must get points.
I liked how New York looked in that game against New England. And Old Glory looked, pretty good. You have to say on the road in messy conditions against Houston, so they're going to be happier at home. Is Nick Civetta going to play in this? I think that's okay.
Civetta's out for a couple of 3 weeks, probably.
Okay, so, that maybe evens the scales a little bit for Old Glory. So, man, this is a close one to call. I'm leaning toward, it's a little bit of a shorter trip as far as the travel thing goes. So, but there is a little bit of
it's like 6 beers on the train.
Yeah, so I'm leaning towards New York, but geez, this is another really close one. I certainly think that Old Glory has what it takes to get the win here. I'm going to go with New York again, and New York by 3.
I just thought you were completely going to pick Old Glory the way you just did. It was a cliffhanger. I love the way you suck us in, and then
it's my brain.
He's good at that. He's good. That's why he's the best Canadian.
These internal battles upstairs, it just you can't make a decision from 1 second to the next.
Yep. I'm on the fence with this one too, Brian, because I think I've seen better rugby out of New York than I have seen out of Old Glory this year. But this could be the game where Old Glory just turn up and put 40 points on New York, just the way MLR has been this year. Civetta's missing is going to be huge. I don't think you appreciate the influence he has outside of the line out in that game. On that team. Like, he's a really big anchor on the scrum. He provides a lot of stability at the scrum. They had some issues there as soon as he went off. Old Glory's got a pretty decent scrum. I was looking forward to Stan South versus Nick Savetta at the line out too. It would have been a great little battle, but I'm not going to see it, at least not this week. I'll just for, to keep it interesting, I'll go for Old Glory. I think they clicked this weekend. I think, I have no logical reason why, other than just to make this show interesting.
Hollinshead is probably going to be back.
Do you start him over Harry Bennett, or do you run with the hot hand?
Well, Hollinshead had the hot hand prior. I mean, he's the top of the table, and isn't he the league leader in points scored or kicks made or something? He's up there with the leaders. And you're
a baseball guy, Matt. Who was the Yankees guy who took a day off and never got his job back?
Wally Pipp.
And who was the guy who took his job? Lou Gehrig. That's right. I was trying to remember that.
Wally Pipp had a headache.
Yeah,
but they're getting Hollinshead back. Charlie Hewitt will probably be back. That would soften the blow of losing Savetta. You can also, if you have that, you can use Evan Minturn in the second row to start that game. And he had a pretty good game. He's been a good player in spurts, but he's in that foreign slot player thing. I think New York's going to win this one by 5 points. Just call me crazy.
You're crazy, baby. Yeah.
So, all right. So final thoughts. No COVID cases, shutting down teams. We're already halfway through the season, Brian.
I feel like I'm just going to say the same thing every week when you ask me this question. I'm just thrilled that everything has gone the way it's going. I'm thrilled that every game is compelling. And here we are. I'm here in the library for a reason. I'm trying to find answers to help me for the rest of the season. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
And Dan, did you get in trouble for cutting that piece of Eddie the Fopp Ford Sports Complex turf out of the ground to take it with you? I got that on camera.
The memorabilia, it's going to be worth millions one day when New York's the most expensive franchise in the world of sport. Don't worry about that. Hey, quick shout out to Jesuit Rugby out in Sacramento, repping them for my boy Lou Stanfield. Had a fundraiser on the weekend to raise some money out there. Big Lou, everyone knows Big Lou, great guy. So just repping the Jesuit this weekend. Looking like they're actually going to start getting back to some rugby soon. So it's exciting for all the kids playing high school rugby around the country. So fingers crossed, we keep trending in the right direction. They'll be back playing this fall.
Kudos for that, for Lou, one of my favorite people on the planet. On that note, on behalf of Mr. Bryan Ray and Mr. Dan Power, I'm Matt McCarthy. Thank you for tuning in. And when you're waiting for us for our next show, check out our other segments, which include
our Major League Rugby show, our Global Rugby Recap, What Are the Odds?, our Major League Rugby Sports Bet show with the Philly Godfather, John Bradshaw Layfield, the WWE legend, and Gifty Bailu, martial law, the Zack Attack. And please sign up for our American Red Cross Rugby Wrap-Up Blood Donor Team.